Let me show you how this thing works and what it's all about. This is the lid. Everything is contained. There's 4 stones. There's 2 coarse stones. I'll explain those in a minute. There's 2 fine stones. Now, the easiest way to remove these is to grab the stone and just pop it out.
Okay.
And then these are the safety guards. Now, the stones come in coarse and they come in fine. They have corners and they have flats, and we're going to use all 4 of those surfaces. So as I go through those, I'll show you. These are brass safety guards, and we always want to make sure to use the safety guards. These will go right in here like this, and your stones will fit right in here. Now your stones can go in either with the flat side facing each other or with the corners facing each other. And there's other positions as well. The reason this works so well is because they're so hard. And I'd just like to give you an example of just how hard they really are. If you took something like a file, which you probably think of as the hardest thing you own, and you tried to cut the stone, that black stuff is literally the teeth coming off the file.
Wow.
The stone is so hard that it will cut any kind of metal. In fact, we go a step further. This is a sharpening stone that's used to sharpen steel. And you can see that our stone is actually considerably harder than this. This is a man-made stone. It's technically a synthetic sapphire, and it can be used to cut any type of metal. Now we're going to use 4 different steps or grits in order to get the knife sharp, and just because it's faster.
Okay.
The first position that we use is the 2 corners of the gray stones. Now these don't leave a very good edge, but they're quite rough, and they remove the excess metal. So what happens when a knife goes dull is that you've actually removed the edge and rounded it. And now we're going to remove metal on both sides until we restore that actual edge.
Okay.
Now these will wear. This is a utility stone, and they will eventually wear. In fact, when they have a little bit of wear on them, they actually will cut faster. So when I get a new set home, or what you should do when you get your set home, is take one corner, like the one opposite the groove, and just rub it alongside the other one just to crack the surface.
Okay.
Once the surface is cracked, you'll find that it actually cuts faster. It'll do it on its own anyway, but it'll do it faster that way. So step 1 is a corner of the gray stone, and we're going to use that to actually set our angles.
Okay.
And then we go, once we set our angles, we go to the flat side of the gray stone. Again, the same thing, but now we're going to work with the flat surface. This will make a knife about sharp enough to cut food or paper. We call it a utility edge. It's about the way most knives come from the factory. Step 3 is a corner of the white stone. That's a very sharp edge, butchers and barbers type sharp. And then step 4 is the flat side of the white stone, and that will give you a razor edge.
Wow.
Okay.
Sal, on these, you always want to use the flat side with the flat side and the edge with the edge. You don't want to mix them.
Right, right. The sharpening process is keeping the blade straight up and down. The reason we do that is because that's where your angle control comes from. Like we showed you with the crock pot, that you have angle control. Imagine if you were sharpening a knife, it's difficult to see what that angle may be, but if we turn the stone up so that the angle corresponds to straight up and down, and now you've got a visual control over that position. So when you're sharpening a knife, you're going to start at the back and you're going to pull it towards you. Then you're going to start at the back and pull it towards you. Well, this is a very simple motion, and once people get pretty good at it, they don't pay attention. It's not the beginner that we worry about, and while we have guards there, it's the person that's already used it for a while. One possibility is this. Now that will surely cut your hand if that nice soft brass wasn't there to stop it. Sometimes people will do something like this. Or if you have a big kitchen knife and you pull it over and do something like that. The guards are there to protect your hands, and we would like you to use them at all times. And now we'll get into actually sharpening some of these knives. And we have diagrams that in the book that show what a very coarse edge looks like and what a finer edge looks like, so on and so forth.
Hey, let's get started.
Okay. The coarse stones are the ones that we'll use first, and I got the cameraman's knife, and you can see where the sharks were biting at the edge. So we'll make it sharp. It's not very sharp now, but we'll make it sharp. The sharpener's a little below your waist, works the easiest. Thumb on top of the blade, and what we're going to do is keep the blade straight up and down. The angle is already built into the stone, So as long as we keep the blade straight up and down, we're going to get a perfect angle. And we just start alternating stones, just like this. Go from the heel and pull it towards you so you come right to the tip. Now in the beginning you won't know when to go from one grit to the next grit, so we have you counting strokes. About 20 strokes on each of the 4 steps, and you should be shaving sharp. But I'll show you how to test each one. So that would be 1, 2, 3, like that. Let's just give this a few strokes. We're cutting a little bit of steel off the edge of the knife each time we go down until we restore that edge. We're going to bring that edge together. Now the easiest way to tell if you've brought the edge together is to set it on something like your fingernail, and if you can draw it all the way across without it sliding off, then you know you've set the edge. That's where that rumor came from about checking drag on your fingernail. It has nothing to do with drag. It has to do with seeing if you set the edge.
Okay.
Now ladies usually have fingernail polish, and so that's not a good idea on the nail, but you can use
this one.
You can use the side of the sharpener, even the lid. You can use a piece of Tupperware, but all you're trying to do is make sure that you brought those 2 sides together. Once you brought the 2 sides together, then you go to step 2. That's the flat side of the gray stone, but everything else stays the same. We're taking, again, a little bit of metal off each side, but because we've gone to the flat surface, this kind of softens the pressure, which gives you a more refined or finer edge.
And you're doing 20 strokes again on
20
this?
strokes again here, and that'll give you an edge that's about like a new knife. We call it a utility edge, you could call it a factory edge, and frankly that's all my wife ever uses in the kitchen. She says, I don't need to shave tomatoes, I just need to slice them.
cut hair.
And the gray stone will give you an edge that's actually sharp enough to cut paper or cut food. Then we go into the white stones. Now the white stones are a professional grit. They're oftentimes used by machinists, by dentists, by a variety of people that really need a fine finish. Step 3 is the corner of the white stone. And just as we showed you before, the motion is the same. We're cutting a little bit of steel each time. Now with the white stones, you can actually see the steel because the steel is black. If you look right on the corner of the stone, you'll see a black line forming. That black line is the steel that's coming off the knife. Now if a knife is really dull, you can actually load up enough steel on one of these sections to where you've covered the surface. Once you've covered the surface, it won't remove metal anymore. If you feel that happens, it kind of goes slick on you. Just turn to another corner. When all the surfaces are dirty, then we just wash them out, and I'll show you how to do that when we're done.
Okay.
About 20 strokes here, and she should be sharp enough to shave hair. Now, I'm supposed to tell you not to do this at home because this is dangerous, but you can actually shave the hair off your arm with the knife. So this knife is actually sharp enough to shave hair, and then we'll go into the 4th grit, which is the flat side of the white stone. And this is generally used for things that are already pretty sharp. If you shave with a straight razor, go for it. Most people don't use straight razors anymore, but you use X-Acto knives, you use box cutting knives. There's a variety of knives that you would do that with. And again, about 20 strokes. One good test for this would be to see if you can split a piece of paper. See, we're not cutting through the paper, we're just splitting it. And that gives you a very sharp and a very true edge because it's consistent from one edge to the other. And that's how you'll sharpen all of your plain edge knives.
Sal, you said we're working at 40 degrees here. Why would you use a 30?
This is 40 degrees because we found that that's the best compromised angle to work on any steel. Any knife will get razor sharp at 40 degrees.
Right.
Now some steels can be sharpened at a narrower angle. Sometimes in a kitchen you might want a thinner angle because you're only cutting soft food. We find that, that if the edge is too thin, what happens is it breaks down. So we recommend the 30-degree angle for back beveling. And I'll explain that to you as well. See, it's a much narrower angle. Now let's say that your knife, when it was new, had about a 50-degree angle on it. That's really too wide. It's not going to perform the way you would like it to. But it's fast and easy to do at the factory, and a lot of times they'll do it that way. So we create this 30-degree angle so that you can actually thin out the edge. So you're taking that 50-degree angle and you're really bringing it into 30 degrees. That way when you sharpen the bottom at 40 degrees, you have a nice transition.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And also if you take a knife and you sharpen it at 40 degrees over and over and over, after a couple of years, you're kind of working your way up the blade. Eventually the blade will be pretty fat. Again, that's where you would use your 30-degree angle, again, to thin out the edge.
So sharpening your knife the same way over and over again can almost cause it to go dull?
It's not really causing it to go dull, but as it gets fatter and fatter, you have more resistance trying to cut through something like food.
Okay.
So about every, maybe 10th time that you sharpen your knife, then go into the 30-degree angle and just give it about 50 strokes the same exact way, and that will take the shoulder off of that cutting edge and thin it out to give you a better performance in the long run. Now some people actually sharpen their knives at 30 degrees, and you can. It produces a very sharp edge, what they call scary sharp. But most steels won't hold it. So if you're cutting on something hard like wood, or you're cutting hard boxes, then that very thin edge will break down faster. So it's okay, you can do it, but the best thing to do is to try it and see if you like it. But we recommend the 40-degree angle as the ultimate all-around angle for sharpening knives.
Is that what Spyderco come at? Do you set them at 40 degrees?
Actually, no, we set them a little thinner than that. We have them from the factory, they're coming in at about 30 so that you can maintain your 40 without having to back bevel. But Spyderco is one of the few companies that pays attention to that.